Good day, everybody. Welcome back to Rocky Mountain Readings, where we've been into the beautiful book, Everyday Holiness, the Jewish Spiritual Path of Mussar. And yesterday's class was pretty exciting. It started to teach us how to put this into practice. All of the 18 character traits that we went through, it gave us the weekly and annual guidelines, how to pick certain traits we want to work on, list them, and take one and focus on it each week, trying to develop the strengths within it, or rather than focus on the negative ones, focus on its opposite, the positive side of it, and you'll find that it pulls the negative one away from its negativity. And so yesterday it went into the weekly and annual cycle to work through this and make it an everyday practice to develop and strengthen your own inner character and walk in a more holy way of living. But today we're into chapter 28, the daily practice. Now, we're almost done this book, folks. So if anybody out there is listening and has a suggestion for perhaps something next, I feel I just, drop a comment in the chat box for a book that you may want to hear, and we'll consider it, see if it's available on Kindle or whatever, and see if we can deliver that to you. If not, I've got lots of courses I'm doing, and I need to take some time to finish off a bunch of those. Time, I have no problem filling my days with things to do. Shalom, Sheila. Nice to have you with us. And so today we're into daily practice, and hopefully you're getting a lot out of this. But if you have a suggestion, we will be done this in the next few sessions. I think we got a few more, and then we'll be done with this book, Everyday Holiness. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Hopefully you've learned something from it. But if you have a suggestion for something to go into next, please let me know. Or if the views are too low, I just won't waste my time. I can be putting my efforts into things that are needed. And I'm just grateful for every opportunity to learn and grow. And I believe that we all should be making time in our day to draw closer to Hashem in at least understanding. And welcome, Vishal. Glad to have you with us again from Mumbai. And anybody else on Facebook as well. I know we usually get Michael from Germany there. It's always a joy. Anyway, so let's just jump right in and see what we can get covered today. Daily practice. Daily Mussar practice is quite simple. Many of these practices were developed in the context of the 19th century Orthodox Jewish community, where the unquestioned priority for spiritual religious commitment was Torah study. Mussar techniques had to be effective without being time-consuming. Daily reminder phrase. Soon after you have awakened in the morning and before you begin the activities of your day, you need to remind yourself of the soul trait you are currently working on from your list of 13. To do this, you need to equip yourself with a phrase that captures the essence of each soul trait that is on your list. You'll find a statement of this sort at the head of every chapter in part 2 of this book. You can write out these statements on index cards or slips of paper for easy reference. You can put your cards beside your bed or at another place where you'll be sure to see them as soon as you start your day. I have my cards set up on a little table in the room where I pray and meditate. I place the card that applies to the soul trait I'm working on for that week at the front of the pile. My wife prefers to write her phrase on a small piece of paper that she tapes to the mirror in the bathroom, where she is sure to see it every morning. I know people who have programmed the screensaver on their computer to flash their weekly phrase. The phrases that I have given often derive from traditional sources, but there's nothing magical in the words I've written. If you find that you want to change your phrase to be closer to your own understanding of the quality as it plays out in you, do so. Also, if you have on your list a quality that isn't covered in this book, you will have to find a reminder phrase of your own. Look in a dictionary, a Bible, or any other wisdom source, or just make up a phrase so long as what you end up with accurately captures the essence of the ideal for that particular quality. The reminder phrase must always be short and pithy. Every morning, read over the phrase of the week slowly and with full concentration. Read it aloud, read it several times, or chant it to yourself. Go over this reminder in whatever way will cause it to be so clearly illuminated in your mind that it seems to have been written in neon. Once you've really heard the phrase in so penetrating a way, go on with your day. Of course, during the day, you'll try to live up to the ideals stated on your reminder card, but not with strain or by repressing tendencies. Just do your best. Meditation. The best time to meditate, chant, or do visualization or contemplations is also in the morning, around the same time that you are reviewing your phrase. It's not advisable to do Mussar chanting, visualizations, or contemplations without supervision, but you can undertake a meditation practice on your own. Meditation helps develop qualities of awareness and concentration that are very helpful for supportive of Mussar practice. For example, we've just observed. Then, after a few breaths, direct your mind to hold in awareness the word Shema, which in Hebrew means listen. This is a useful object to meditate on, since listen implies a certain sensitivity and receptiveness. It doesn't matter whether you say the word to yourself or visualize it. The point is to practice developing strong concentration, and some people are more oral and others are more visual. Your awareness is likely to wander away from that single word, Shema, and off into thinking and planning and wondering and judging. As soon as you become aware that your attention has wandered off, make note of that fact and gently let go of whatever it was that dragged awareness away from its focus. Return awareness to the word that is your object of concentration. If it's a sound that has snagged you and dragged awareness toward it, note that hearing has taken place and return your attention to the focus word Shema. Or has a feeling in your leg drawn attention to your leg and away from your chosen focus? Here, make a mental note of feeling and return your attention to the word object. Gently but insistently return to the single word Shema. This meditation helps to develop your concentration and inner clarity. It also helps you to become more aware of the observer within. Since distraction will commonly occur, meditation can be a way to identify the things that have the power to drag us away from our intentions. You can learn something important about your spiritual curriculum by becoming aware of what it is that distracts you from concentrating where you would like to. What distracts you won't be the same as what distracts me. I have learned over the years that I myself am prone to planning when I am supposed to be meditating. I sit and clear my mind with the committed intention of meditating on a single word, and within a few seconds I fly off into thinking about what I have to do next, and what I have to get done that day, and what if this, and what if that. As soon as I catch myself doing that, I turn my focus to the word object. Later, though, when I reflect on my experience, I can see that having my mind steal away into planning reveals a soul trait that is on my spiritual curriculum, which is trust, or bitachon. I have told my mind to attend to the word Shema, but up bubbles concern about what will be coming in the future. With stronger trust, I could set aside my anxiety about future happenings. Now I am meditating, the future will be provided for. You may be distracted by planning as well. Or maybe you sit to meditate and it's desire or lust or anger or judgment or jealousy that comes to pull your mind away from your meditation. When this happens, gently return your mind to the word object. Later, you can reflect on what that distraction is telling you about the soul traits on your spiritual curriculum. Bedtime practice. At bedtime, pull out your notebook and try to identify events in your day that might reveal the presence of the specific quality you are working on for that week. Record all relevant incidents, thoughts, and experiences that relate to that particular quality. This is a different use of the journal than when you were recording anything that revealed a soul trait, so you could compose your list of traits. Now you are using the evening writing to gain insight and clarity on the one trait that is your focus for the week. Right. You may have assigned yourself exercises, kabbalot, regarding your trait of the week, a practice described in the next chapter. If so, your evening journal is where you record whether you did or did not do something that day to fulfill your Kabbalah. If you are practicing generosity and you set yourself to do 3 generous acts a day, for example, you'll record in your journal whether or not you did those acts and what you did or didn't do. You can have a Kabbalah for any soul trait, and you will record in your diary how you did in fulfilling that exercise that day. But you record more than just your fulfillment of Kabbalot. Write down whatever you see in your day that touches on the soul trait that is your focus for that week. Your notes should be brief, just an outline of the facts that reveals something of your characteristics, focused especially on the role you played in events. Don't worry if what you write wouldn't pass as literature. No one but you ever needs to see this notebook. It is crucially important that you not pass judgment on yourself in the retelling. You don't want to beat yourself up for your slip-ups or heap praise on yourself for your victories. You just want a factual and accurate picture of the play of your inner life as it shapes your thoughts, words, and deeds in action. The details contain the underlying patterns that recur in your life. This is huge, the recurring patterns in your life. And by examining them, you get nothing less than a readout on the contents of your unconscious, as these express themselves in the particulars of your life. There is no need to write volumes. Brief notes will do. More important than the amount you write or the floweriness of the prose is the honesty you bring to your own introspection. Shine a bright light on your day. See what there is to see about the quality that is your focus for that week, and write down just what you need to in order to act, in order to record and clarify the facts of your motives, actions, and reactions. It may not always be apparent which of the qualities was actually involved in a situation. In that case, reviewing a chapter or two from part 2 will help to identify and understand which of the soul traits may or may not have been present in that particular situation. You may feel tempered to run over things mentally instead of troubling to write them out. But I can tell you from experience that it is important that notes be written. Just thinking about your day gives you no visible, tangible practice to hold on to. And that increases the likelihood that in time your accounting will slip away and ultimately be abandoned. Also, most of us, me included, are often perfectly content to keep ideas all jumbled and fuzzy in our heads, even though we delude ourselves into thinking we have them all fully worked out. The foundation for Mussar practice. I can't imagine that keeping a scorecard can be as effective in this way. It is very important to commit to writing in your journal every day, even if you don't feel like it, even if nothing much happened that day, even if you are tired, even if you get to bed late, even if just haul out your notebook and start to write. I have recommended to students that it is better to write the words nothing in particular in your diary than nothing at all. The only break I ever give myself is Friday evening because I make a practice of not writing on the Sabbath, which begins on at sunset on Friday. The results of this practice reveal themselves very slowly, the way the outlines of a photo emerge on paper, soaking in developing solution. When you miss a day, you delay that process, but we're still missing one day can lead to missing another until your notebook somehow gets power. The very act of becoming conscious of our inner life robs the unconscious sources of their might. and frees us to direct our lives closer to the values and ideals we hold for ourselves that until now we have not been able to reach. In short, the dictatorship of habit is overthrown and replaced by true freedom of choice. This is like liberating. The result is clarity and strength you have never before experienced. Your final daily activity is to read a small section from a Mussar text. The ideal is to read a few paragraphs that touch directly on the soul trait you have in focus that week, such as a chapter in part 2 of this book, or from one of the other Mussar sources that focus on soul traits such as Hespon Hanefesh or Orkot Zadakim. Mussar is also a perspective on life and on our journey through this world. And so it is also beneficial to read a Mussar text that doesn't focus on the soul trait per se. Finally, a number of biographies of Mussar masters have been published. These too make good reading because they embody the Mussar teachings and share the inspiring and instructive stories of our guides who went this way before us. There is no set time to do this reading in your day. I prefer to do it in the evening before I write in my journal. You might prefer to do it right after your morning recitation of your phrase, or another time in your day might suit you. As with many good habits, the important thing is to find a time that will work for you consistently so you'll be able to keep up the practice with minimum resistance. Beautiful stuff. An illustration. Let's say that the first quality on your list is equanimity. On the day that you begin the practice and for the next 6 days, every morning when you arise, you will recite to yourself the phrase, I've provided, or your own version of it. Rise above. Biography of a Mussar great will help your practice as well. If you have a learning partnership, sometimes during a week when equanimity is in focus, you will meet and learn with your partner. Then at the end of 7 days, focused just on equanimity, you will have reached your changeover day. The second week is about to begin, and now you leave equanimity behind and refer to your list to see what your next quality is. You put the reminder card for that new soul trait at the front of the pile. Read to recite every morning of that week, while in the evenings you'll record only those matters related to that next quality on your list. So it goes through the 13 weeks, at which point you will again reach a changeover day that will return you right back to the first of the qualities on your list. In this example, back to equanimity. In the course of a year, you will go through that set of 13 qualities exactly 4 times. Weekly practice. You now have your list of traits. Congratulations. Now your practice begins in earnest. You will focus on the first trait of your list for 1 week, then move on to the next, on through the full cycle of traits on your list. It doesn't matter which day of the week you begin, but once you've chosen the day, that will be the day you change over to your next soul trait. It's good to pick a day that's already in some way a changeover day for you to make it easier to remember to make the switch from one quality to the next one on your list. I make the change on Saturday evenings, which is when the Jewish week begins. If you work Monday to Friday, you might want to make Sunday evening your changeover day. Do whatever works for you that makes it easier to remember to make the switch. We turn now to look at what you will actually do in your week of practice. Text study. Every week, you should read something from a Mussar source on the trait you have in focus. The chapters in part 2 of this book are written specifically for that purpose. You can also find reading material in the classic Mussar texts like The Duties of the Heart, which we covered, Orko Zadakim, The Palm Tree of Deborah, which I'm doing right now with Rabbi Poston, Tomer Devorah, The Path of the Just. No, that's the one we did by the Ramkal Hespon Hanefesh. Or Rabbi Dressler's discussion of giving and taking in Strive for Truth. A certain amount of your selection should be read daily, as we explained in the section on daily practice. It's very helpful to set up a learning partnership with someone else whom you meet with every week or two to learn a text. This is the traditional learning form called Shivruta, which is traditional in large part because it is such a very effective way to learn. When you read something on your own, you don't get nearly as much from the text as when you do, as you do when you discuss and even debate it with a partner. If nothing else, you will benefit from seeing the text through different eyes, with a different perspective. Ideally, you should meet with your partner in person though I have had very successful and satisfying telephone learning partnerships. Or even today, you can have Zoom meetings or Skype calls. And yeah. Learning with a partner can be focused on the reading you are doing about your soul trait, or you may want to work your way through a Mussar text. At this writing, I have 2 weekly partnerships, each of which is making its way slowly through a Mussar text. Reading and learning a Mussar text are done in a specific way. You don't just read through the words as you would a novel or newspaper article. One partner reads a sentence aloud and then pauses. Either partner can then ask a question or give a reflection or illustration to support or even to challenge what the author says. When the point has been thoroughly considered and there seems to be no more to say, go on to the next sentence. The learning partners can alternate, taking turns reading a paragraph or a page. I can illustrate from my own experience. For over 2 years, I met weekly with a partner to study the palm tree of Devora. That's at Tomer Devora. The Mussar classic, written by Rabbi Moshe Cordovero in the 16th century. My partner and I took turns reading a paragraph aloud, sometimes stopping after a sentence to clarify our own understanding of the meaning, and having a thorough discussion at the end of each paragraph. We made special effort to see how we could apply Rabbi Cordovero's wise counsel in our own lives. Now, this partner and I have gone on to learn Alei Ashur, a more recent book on Mussar by Rabbi Shlomo Wolb. I recall one paragraph in Tomer Devora that made a big impression. It described how wisdom, or chokmah, is distributed within the universe. Wow. The author then drew an analogy for how we ourselves should share our own wisdom in life. It didn't sound like much of a teaching. It simply said one should disseminate his wisdom to each person in the measure his intellect can grasp, according to what is proper for him and his needs. That's the whole of it. And had I just been reading on my own, I likely would have assumed I got the point right away and kept right on reading. But when my partner and I stopped to discuss this guidance, so many things came tumbling out. We grasped that we were being told that wisdom, as good as it is, isn't necessarily better for being more. The analogy we came up with was of sunshine and rain, which are certainly good, though too much of one will create a desert and too much of the other a flood. So it is with our wisdom. We surely have an obligation to share it, but for it to be helpful, before we pour our wisdom on someone, we have to exercise discernment to determine the level of that person's capacity and need. Very important. It's just not right to unleash our wisdom in excess of those levels, because if we do, we can cause harm, even with wisdom. This is so wise and practical, yet it took a careful reading and a lot of discussion to uncover this much value in the teaching. Huge concept, guys, huge concept. We've encountered the Mussar principle that the external awakens the internal. In short, the heart and mind of human beings are deeply affected by physical actions. As you can imagine, this reality has two sides. Negative actions leave negative traces, while positive actions leave positive traces. A diet of violent movies, political leaders repeatedly trying to achieve their aims by violence, or a home life punctuated by violence will generate a soul accustomed to violence. So too for other influences we might consider negative and damaging. Fortunately, the dynamic works in the opposite direction as well. The hard heart that does kindness in time becomes softened. This teaching has given rise to the practice of Kabbalot, a word which literally means things received, but which can be understood more simply as Mussar exercises that a person takes upon him or herself. Every week, you need to assign yourself Kabbalot related to the soul trait you have in focus during any given week. For example, if you have the soul trait of generosity on your list, you will want to cultivate a more open handed way of being in the world. You look at your financial situation and determine that you can give away only $100 in that week. That generosity is the trait you have in focus. We have been taught that it is the act of opening the hand that leaves its impression on the soul. And so it is the act of giving that stimulates the soul trait of generosity. With that in mind, it follows that your Kabbalah will be to give away $1 to 100 people or cause rather than $100 to one person or organization. The act of extending your hand 100 times is the external motion that will generate the internal motion you seek. Rabbi Dressler looked at this very issue when he considered how we can develop the quality of generosity. For his starting point, Rabbi Dressler cites the same line from the Path of the Just. External motions instigate internal ones. Rabbi Dressler concluded that the very act of giving is what makes us more charitable, merciful, and loving. Love flows in the direction of giving, he said. Giving $100 in $1 increments over the course of a week is Kabbalah for the soul trait of generosity. So too is assigning yourself to greet other people. By giving your greeting, the trait of generosity will be implanted in your heart. I notice that when some people come to sit down after having received an honor in a synagogue, they keep their heads down and beetle right back to their seats. Other people make eye contact and then a hand is extended and shaken. And there are some people who seem to want to shake every hand they can reach. You assign yourself the Kabbalah to greet more people than you ordinarily do, or a certain category of people, or to greet people more enthusiastically. Rabbi Wolb suggests a Kabbalah for impatience. He suggests that we take on the practice in small doses, 30 minutes a day. Pick one time a day when your patience is most likely to be challenged. It is when you first get to work is it when you first get to work in the morning, or when you come home in the evening after a long and stressful day, or when you, like me, slip behind the wheel of a car late as usual? Now commit to being patient for half an hour in just that period. If that is too long and you are likely to lose your patience before the time is up, start with 15 minutes or even 10. The point of this Kabbalah is to begin to exercise some choice over how you react to situations, and like any training regime, start small and build up. Rabbi Wolb says that after doing this practice for a while, add 30 minutes some other time in your day. Like that, over the course of a whole year, you will have made patience a cornerstone of your daily life. With so much experience with patience, he says, you will respond patiently to whatever happens to you. Another example of a Kabbalah also comes from an assignment Rabbi Wolb gave to a Mussar group, drawing on the saying in Pirkei Avot, who is wise, one who learns from every person. He deduces that there is literally something to learn from every person, some small behavior, some personality trait, or some bit of wisdom. His students were assigned the Kabbalah of finding 3 things every day to learn from their friends. We will continue for a number of weeks, he writes. From this point, it will be substantive learning that we will pay attention to some good behavior of a friend and to say to ourselves, how nice is this behavior? And I will also act like him in this thing. Every week, assign yourself Kabbalah that will Give practical expression to the soul trait that is your trait of the week. Your cabelote should be custom designed to stretch you in just the way you need to exercise the soul trait you want to strengthen. Here's some samples. Generosity, give $1 to 100 people or a cause. Humility, sit in the back of the room or a hall. Honor, speak only positively about other people. If you're trying to overcome, yeah. Gratitude, express thanks to every inanimate thing that sustains you. Whoa. Simplicity, acquire nothing non-essential. Loving kindness, greet everyone you meet before they greet you. Excellent ways to put it into practice. Come on, you. Quit jumping the page. Further practices. The annual cycle. When you have finally reached the end of a whole year of practice, there are several things for you to do. By this time, you will have completed a tremendous amount of introspective work, more than many people do in their whole lives. You will see yourself and know yourself more fully and more deeply than ever before in the deeds, and as long as what you come out with is an honest assessment of yourself in regard to each of the qualities you've been following all year, be as honest and direct as you can be about what there is to be seen in the record you've kept. This year-end finale highlights to your mind in bold letters what you can see of your inner soul traits as these have played out in your life over the year. You may want to begin under each quality by noting, at the beginning of the year, I was blah, 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 and then go on and talk about what you came to see and maybe even any change that you saw taking place. A lot of the statements may begin, I am, ... and that's good. The following examples might give you ideas of where to start as you sit down to write for yourself. At the beginning of the year, I saw myself as a person who has no problem being decisive, and by the end of the year, I had confirmed that view. I concluded that I do not respect a firm line between what is true and what is false. My equanimity is disturbed more than anything by events that trigger my greed. Yeah, excellent practice. And I know you've done a lot of counseling studies, Sheila, and you can see how these ideas have been, worked out over 1,000 years and penned down and practiced by many people, and you can just see the beauty in it for sure, and how it is life changing and character altering, and so on with whatever is true for you as revealed in a full year of notebook accumulations. It may seem to you, reading this before even having begun the practice, that this essay will be hard to write, but I can tell you that when you do the practice, it almost writes itself because you got so much of it in your forefront of your mind. Read over your summary, tuck it in the back of your notebook, and know that your year is done. You now have a sound foundation to identify the qualities you will want to have on your list as you carry on into the next year of practice. All time bound practices are enhanced by markers and celebrations. When you have finished a year, mark that passage in a way that is meaningful to you. At the very least, get yourself a new notebook for the new year coming up. You might want to do something more than that, and I suggest you consider ritual practices that are traditionally used to mark other sorts of closures and beginnings. For birthdays, we have cakes and candles. The completion of a tractate of Talmud study is celebrated with friends and colleagues, and food and drink, haircuts, new clothing, presents, special food. Do whatever is meaningful to you as a marker to close an important period in your life. But please do something to mark this completion. That marker gives the completion its finality, and it gives you the honor you deserve for having cared for yourself and your world enough to complete the process. Wow. What a statement. I see so many people that don't do this. They just don't give themselves the honor they deserve and the care that they cared for themselves. Come on, you. And lastly, at the end of the year, it is time to make a new list of 13 qualities. There may be qualities you want to carry over from one year's list to the next. There may be new ones given in this book that you want to try out. You may have become aware of a particular quality of your own that you want to add. Select or compose your reminder phrases and prepare the cards. Set your new notebook on your bed. Why does it end? I could answer by saying, when you reach perfection. When does it end? Well, when you reach perfection. But it's better to ask, why should there be an end? As my teacher has impressed on me, life is about growing and changing, not finishing. And this I find so often, especially with young people. You ever notice young people, they're so always in such a hurry to grow up. And I seen one joke or a meme where it said to young people, don't be in such a hurry to grow up. It's a trap. And reality is, kids are in such a hurry. They think, when they're 6, if they were only 10, it would be much better. And then if they were only 15 or 20, and then they realize, yeah, you got to realize life is about growing and changing, not finishing. Don't be in a rush to be done with this world. It's opportunity. As long as you find this process is helping you grow and develop to get clearer and more effective, to become more radiant, it is of value and can be continued. It's about everyday holiness. And when you work in the practice, and next thing you know, a year, 2, 3, I know it sounds like a long period, a sentence, but it's bite size and you can walk it. And all of a sudden, you're one who's emanating those characteristics that you recorded and worked on, and you become an ambassador, somebody that can actually discuss in a meaningful way each and every one of those, because people see it in your life for sure. Partners and groups. A final note. I've described all the preparations and practices for an individual practicing Mussar on his own. That isn't the only way. There either. It helps. There is a lot to be said for working with a partner, even in a group. The main benefit of working with someone else is that you gain the strength of his or her support. You have someone to turn to when you feel your resolve slipping, or you're stuck trying to get clarity about some aspect of yourself. We all know how much easier it is to see the consistent weaknesses in someone other than ourselves, and this faculty can be put to good use by working in partners. Our ancestors cautioned us not to mistake our own strength. The Mussar teachers in the 19th century Lithuania developed methods of learning in partnership and groups because they recognized how difficult it is to make the journey alone. The Mussar luminaries, Rabbi Luzzatto, the Ramkal, in the 18th century, and Rabbi Cordovero in the 16th century, had their own learning circles. The fellowship of others offer not only companionship, though that is a great gift that should be not be minimized either. It helps us to straighten our way. Spiritual friends are treasure, whether they are teachers or students or companions or all three in one. But this is a big but. For a partnership or group to work, there needs to be a tremendous amount of trust and safety. Very important. We get value from working together in direct proportion to the honesty and truth we bring to looking at ourselves. A partner may help us to be more honest, but we have to feel strong trust in that other person if we are going to reveal what we really think about and see in ourselves. I would recommend working in partnership only with someone with whom you already have a sound pre-existing trust relationship, like a spouse, a close friend, or a clergy or a family member. This brings up the question whether you are working solo with a partner or in a group, of how much of the results of this practice you should share with the other people, even those very close to you. There's no absolute guideline about this. Some people gain even more insight by talking over their process and discoveries, while others prefer to keep it all private, like a personal diary. A lot depends on motive. If sharing increases your clarity, it would seem to be a positive thing. If you catch yourself gossiping or just going over and over old rants, silence would be the way to go. Yeah. Do not be discouraged if your study of Mussar does not seem to produce results. If your study seems to make no impression at all on your soul, if your ways seem not to have changed at all, know with true faith that even if success is not revealed to the eyes of your body, it is revealed to the eyes of your mind. As you learn Mussar more and more, the hidden impressions it makes upon you gather together and have an effect. And that was a wise statement by Rabbi Yisrael Slanter. I've just seen too many people that have that wiggly worm mentality, and they look so down on themselves when they work so hard at it. And to be encouraged, to be the best you can be. Oh, traditional Jewish books end with the statement, "It is finished and completed. Praises to Hashem, the creator of all." Those words express what I feel as I come to the conclusion of this book, and I hope you will join me in this prayer. But what is true for this book is not so for the way of the soul. The soul's journey will continue as long as you are alive. As Rabbi Luzzatto says in Closing of the Path of the Just, there is no end to the matter. There is no point at which you can say that you have learned all there is to know about your soul traits and how they play out in your life. Plus, the tests of life keep coming, and you'll find if you want a more challenging life or a more successful takeoff, if you're equipped to handle something greater, Hashem starts to bring it as a challenge to you in life. And yeah, you got to look at it in practical aspects. There is always more to learn. There are always new tests. There are higher levels of spiritual maturity that you can't imagine from where you stand and look today. That's, yeah. There is no end to potential for growth. My Mussar teacher, Rabbi Pir, asked me why we should even want to come to the end of our learning. As he put it, the point is to read the book, not to finish the book. It's to be on the journey, not to reach the end of a journey. This notion has deep roots in tradition. The Maharal of Prague says much in the same way, in a way that really defines the Jewish notion of the spiritual journey. Man is not created in his final wholeness. Man was created to actualize his wholeness. That is the meaning of the verse. Man was born to toil. Man is born and exists for the aim of this toil, which is the actualization of his potential. He can, however, never attain the state of actualized being, which is, finish line mentality. And if I just get that, I'll be complete. That's so delusional. He must toil forever to actualize his wholeness. That is the essence of his final wholeness. Even when he attains a certain level of actualization, he still remains potential and will forever have to go on actualizing himself. That is such an important statement by the Maharal of Prague. I gotta highlight it. On the Jewish spiritual path, taking and keeping your place as a pilgrim on the way of ascent is much more important than reaching the peak. This is why students of Mussar have traditionally been called B'nai Aliyah, those who ascend. Holiness in this world arises in the process of becoming whole, Hishtalmut, not in the state of wholeness itself, Shlimut. Becoming whole, Hishtalmut, is a verb, while wholeness is a noun. Wow, think about it. Becoming whole is a verb, while wholeness is a noun. You are a soul. Yes, there is a body and a personality and a history, but fundamentally, at the root and core of your creation, you are a soul. Because this is the primary reality of your being, you should make the soul the prime consideration in charting your path through life. It is easy to lose track of your soulfulness, especially as we live in a culture that outright denies soul life. But don't be misled. Your spiritual nature is more profound than your physical, and no material attainments can compare to the spiritual. Whether or not you engage consciously with your spiritual challenges, no one can compel you to wake up to the steps on the way you are walking, but you yourself can choose to do so. You can open to the guidance of the soul. In the words of Moshe ibn Ezra, in my body he has kindled a lamp from his glory. It tells me of the paths of the wise. Are you listening? As you continue to become sensitive to the soul traits that make up your personal curriculum, the way will become clear. You will see with ever increasing clarity exactly what you are bringing into your own life as well as the lives of others. And from that clarity will emerge both the motivation to change, and a course of action. You will face tests because life comes with tests. And when you see these tests through a Mussar lens, then the ones you pass will strengthen you, and the ones you don't will teach you. Big, huge point. And this is the way of true living. I think this is so important when you realize that the tests in life, the ones you pass will strengthen you, and the ones you don't, they should teach you. And you know you're on the path of life, even if you're not perfecting it. It's 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 a journey, not a sprint, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. When you let your path of growth unfold without any guidance from your wise self, you let God wring change from your heart, most often by applying a tourniquet of sorrows. The alternative is to enter consciously into a path of self-transformation through deliberate spiritual practice. That is the real choice that confronts us. Go through life blindfolded, banging and scraping all along all the corners and edges, and finding your direction by what you bounce off of, or methodically work to lift the veils that obscure clear sight and wise guidance so that the path of life is pursued with grace and wisdom. Mussar offers you just that methodical path. Mussar has positive, though lesser, effect when it is just learned as information, and potentially enormous impact when it is taken on as a systematic practice. I was taught early on that Mussar is not something you learn, it is something you do. The Torah advises us to circumcise the foreskin of our hearts. And I've said this a couple of times during this course. It's about circumcision of the heart. That's not an easy image, but if we start from the place of acknowledging that an obstructed, walled off heart is an impediment, if not an ailment, then the breakthrough that the Torah speaks of seems entirely desirable. We have those times when our hearts reform, life seems so much more vibrant then, and our corrections are so much more vital. Even if there has been pain, we are made infinitely more present. The Kotzker Rebbe said it best, there is nothing so whole as a broken heart. Wow, beautiful statement. But by small and imperceptible steps, we soon grow accustomed to our new situation. And the heart that was made so tender and accessible under the knife of experience once again begins to disappear behind a slowly emerging wall. And then at some point, experience will intrude once again, starting the new cycle. There is something inevitable about the process I am describing. It happens to all of us. Whether we self identify as being on a spiritual journey or whether that sort of language is completely alien. The soul is set in the factory to have its compass pointing towards wholeness. And yet there seems to be no way to get to wholeness without first breaking up the old formation in order that it can be put together anew. The Torah uses the image of circumcision, and it seems to me that it invokes that covenantal rite of passage to teach us something additional and important. Circumcision is an initiation consciously undertaken. It may be that our hearts grow through a natural process that is built right into the blueprint of our lives, but there comes a point where many of us realize that we can choose to put ourselves through the process of growth as a conscious, deliberate act, as we would an initiation. It is clear, boy, that's one huge statement there. It is clear that none of us has any more choice over whether our hearts will be challenged to deepen and mature than we do over whether or not to grow older. But the precious choice that does lie in our hands is to decide whether or not to go through that spiritual growing as a conscious act in which the soul is given a guiding role in setting our course. Mussar is dedicated to helping you take just such a conscious role in guiding your journey of growing. By becoming more sensitive to the soul traits that are dynamic in your life, you will become familiar with your curriculum of growth. Every situation and interaction you encounter is a mirror for your soul traits. I hope you will continue to stay awake to the reflections that appear to you there. I also hope that you have come to a deeper recognition of the extent of your free will. While it may seem that the state of your soul trait is unchanging, don't be deceived. Change is always taking place, and you do have a choice. You can make a difference. All the great and little efforts you have made may have prepared the way so that the very next decision you make will be entirely uncharacteristic for you. The pattern might be just about to break. You can't know before you have made that choice, but along the way, you must believe that change is possible. To return to the quote from Rabbi Luzzatto, he says another thing too. Not only is there no end to our learning, there is also the reality that we cannot fathom the extent of it. He is pointing here to the fact that the scope of Mussar work encompasses mystery, both the great mystery that permeates the farthest reaches of the universe and the enshrouded dimension of your own inner life, which are equally mysterious. The ordinary human mind, like yours and mine, is a wonderful thing, but it simply does not have the capacity to grasp all that is true of our world and ourselves. The mind is the implement of knowing, and Rabbi Luzzatto is cautioning you not to set yourself up for disappointment by making your mind the sole judge of your progress on your journey of ascent. The mind just cannot see or fathom what is going on, especially at the most profound levels, within or without. Because of that, Mussar always engages your mind, but it addresses your heart as well. As I've been guided by Rabbi Elihu Lopian's definition of Mussar, making the heart grasp what the mind knows. Finally, you are not alone. You did not design the way of the soul, and the one who did is there to help. If you take steps, light will be shone on the path ahead. The Talmud assures us one who comes to purify himself is assisted from on high. And Hebrew names such as it continues, when a man sacrifices himself a little here below, he is sanctified much above. And when he sanctifies himself in this world, he is sanctified in the world to come. Higher states, spiritual breakthroughs, and movement toward wholeness are gifts you can receive. These acts of grace are always possible, and yet are more likely when you take steps to help yourself along the way. The learning you do on the way of the soul etches its message on the flesh of your heart. It becomes who you are. Those changes may be invisible to your mind, and so you may hear a discouraging inner voice telling you it hasn't made any difference. don't believe it. The goal is not to be able to look and see a change as if you were to be made taller or change the color of your hair. The real point is to have made a change so deeply in the bowels of your soul that when a situation confronts you, you respond to it naturally and intuitively, and yet differently from how you would have responded to the exact same situation only a year ago. I heard a story from a student that really makes clear how deeply the learning penetrates and how little of what is really going on may be available to conscious thought. She told me that she had learned the word nefesh from my teaching, but actually she had forgotten it. Then, in the midst of a day of river rafting that was very therapeutic for her, the word nefesh suddenly popped into her mind. She couldn't remember where she knew the word from or even what it meant, but it didn't seem like a random occurrence. And so, when she got home, she looked up in her notes, and there it was, soul. Her conscious mind didn't remember a thing about the teaching, but the message had taken root much deeper down in the soul that spoke up for itself just at the time she was nurturing it. This is how Mussar works. I know that from my own experience too. I hope you will have or will see something of this at work in your life as well. But even if not, it is just a matter of time. I've tried to keep the focus in our work together on the positive. This isn't always the voice that you can hear in Mussar writings and teachings. Sometimes teachers have been relentless in urging us to focus on our weaknesses and flaws. I too want to be honest with you, with yourself about yourself. Want you to be honest with yourself about yourself. But I insist that the perspective you bring to seeing your overall situation be positive. If we are seeming to work on weaknesses, it is only in order that we can get beyond working on weaknesses. There is nothing but integrity in the notion of wholeness and holiness that are fixed points towards which we are orienting our steps. Carry that in mind. There is nothing but integrity on the notions of wholeness and holiness that are fixed points towards which we are orienting our steps. What a beautiful statement. And so, even if you feel that the soul trait has you in its unyielding grip, step back for a moment and appreciate that it is only because of the gift of consciousness that you are able to perceive what you can, and the gift of the Torah that provides ideals for living, and those ideals that give you something to measure yourself against, and the gift of conscience that makes you see where you can improve, and so on. Don't lose sight of your gifts. You should have double vision so that you can simultaneously see your curriculum and the gifts you have in hand that make it possible for you to walk that path. You need to see both. Rabbi Simcha Sizzle Ziv, the altar of Kelm, encourages us in just this direction. It is the work of a lifetime, he said, and that is just why you have been given a lifetime in which to do it. I will close with an expression of gratitude and a poem. Many generations before us have walked this path. We are graced to have access to their precious wisdom, gleaned from centuries of acute observation. To them we must be grateful. Rabbi Lopian offers us a prayer. Let us give thanks to our teachers, the guides of the community who wrote at length on Mussar in order to cultivate and soften hearts of stone. The poem is from Shem Tov ben Pelkira, a Jewish poet of 13th century Spain, whose words light the way and strengthen the heart, as I hope the way of the soul will be illuminated for you and your heart will be strong. If fear is like a rock, then I am a hammer. If sorrow is a fire, then I am the sea. When it comes, my heart increases its strength like the moon that shines brighter when the darkness falls. Beautiful. And that's the end of the book. I thought we would need a couple more days, but that is the end of the wonderful book, Everyday Holiness. And I hope you see, especially towards the end, how he teaches you how to practically put it into work each and every day, and strongly encourages the lifestyle and the benefits thereof. It's not something, in our day and age, we have so many people that want that quick fix. I want to take a pill and have everything be okay, just one dose and it's all good. And then that's not real in a lot of respects, especially when you're dealing with character traits. These are character traits which are developed over learned processes and learned habits and hardened into the heart, and they need to be chipped away at properly or dissolved properly. And you got to look at it for what it is, break it down. And I think that the path of Mussar explains it. And when you look at it in that annual cycle, that weekly cycle, that daily routine, it can be done, and massive transformation. Imagine where you'd be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years if you did this same cycle over and over and over. And I want to encourage you, consider doing it. If you followed along this book, you'll see how very achievable. It's broken down into bite-sized pieces so that anybody can partake and be a part of that transformation and learn to become a holier person, one who is whole. I like that definition towards the end rather than imagining it's some altruistic a superstar, but it's wholeness. And that's just where you are comfortable in your own skin and in the world you live. You're thankful, and you're a blessing to others, and others acknowledge and recognize that. And there's honor based on the traits that you determine to integrate into your Mussar path. So I encourage everybody, give it a whirl. It may be something I even work in with a group sometime, because I love that notion, especially having a partner, somebody you can bounce things off of just to get feedback on. And Sheila out there is my mother. She's been following along with us, and she used to come over a lot for coffee when I was living closer to her. And, she was just always a joy to be one to share ideas off of, because I always got honest feedback. And, you cannot go wrong with having somebody in your life that you can bounce those notions off of and feelings, so that when you're doing a reading together, you're both getting input. It'll just strengthen and help implant deeper into the soul. I think that when you're doing it with a community or with another study partner, it's going to be impressed upon your soul deeper for sure. But it's been a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful journey. And I want to thank everybody that has attended on a regular basis, and those of you that have checked it out afterwards. Shalom, Michael Weingart in Germany. Glad you attended. Always good to have you with us. I'm thankful that you've been checking in with a lot of our broadcasts of late, and it's just a joy to always meet new people. So I hope you've enjoyed this book, Everyday Holiness. I'll see if I can come up with something fresh for next week. But if anybody's got a suggestion, please feel free to throw it in the chat room, or send me a message, a Facebook message, or even you can always email me at dan.ca@britolam.community is my email with the No Hide World Center. That's Dan, DAN .ca @britolam, BRITOLAM.community, COMMUNITY. That's my email with them, and it's always a joy to hear from Noahides all around the world, and to hear input. But if there's a book that you want to hear that is available, especially if it's available on Kindle, I find I love the notes. They're great, are able to highlight notes very quickly, whereas when I read a book, I'll cover it with highlighter if I can, so you have it for reference purpose. But I like this because I can color code it very quickly without interrupting the flow of reading and too much. And it's just, So, we're going to call it quits for today. Rocky Mountain Readings. We are finished with the wonderful book, Everyday Holiness. And hopefully we'll be back next week with something fresh. I am scheduled to be on this Saturday with Rabbi Chaim Kaufman for part 3 of chapter 2, Mishnah 9 of Pirkei Avos. Always a joy to be with Rabbi Kaufman. He's such a fun fellow. I'm not on with Rabbi Poston, but I'm still scheduled to be on with both on Sunday with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg in our Genesis class, which is, to me, my home base. And if anybody's new and wants to be a part of that Zoom meeting, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll make sure you get the Zoom link. And then also in the afternoon on Sunday, we're doing our Working Together series with Rabbi Carmi Ingber of Atlanta, Georgia, with our wonderful friends at YPS and Nativ through the Nativ Rod Bryant's Zoom meeting. If you want to attend that and you've got some Q&A questions you want to ask the rabbis, he's there to answer the tough questions. He's a very learned rabbi, good friend of the Noahide World Center, Rabbi Ingber, and he's finally retired from his synagogue, the Kehila in Sandy Springs, just outside of Atlanta. And, he has had a lifetime of study and being a rabbi. So he saw a lifetime of experience. This is somebody that has great knowledge to share, and I invite you to check that out. That's at 5 p.m. Eastern on Sundays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Central, for those out of the Texas area and whatnot. So I am on with those two on Sunday. So I'm going to sign out for now, and thank you for joining me for the book Everyday Holiness, the Jewish Spiritual Path of Mussar. You can't go wrong. You'll only get better and better and better and whole. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.